Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a GitHub repository and then link that GitHub repository to Rstudio project. Then if you make any changes to that Rstudio project locally on your computer, how to commit those changes and push those changes to GitHub. This way, whatever you do locally will be backed up in the cloud, and then if you want to share that repository with anyone else, all you have to do is just give them the URL for that repository. Then they can download the code, the data sets, any other files that you have stored on in that repository. They can download them on their own computers and they can work there. So you do not have to share it through, say, Dropbox or some other cloud-based drives like Google Drive or OneDrive. Another benefit is that if you use multiple computers, you can always sync your project to each other through GitHub. So because Git keeps the older versions of your code, if you delete anything, you can always go back, and that can happen from any computer. So let's get going. Before we begin, make sure that you have github.com account, and then you have also linked this to your local installation of Rstudio. So that means you need to have a personal access token that you have already input into Rstudio, and your Rstudio is now set up to download stuff from GitHub as well as upload things on GitHub. This is extremely important. So once you have this account set up and these links are already established, then the next step is to create your GitHub repository that we will link to Rstudio. For that, you'll have to just head to your GitHub and then click on this button called New. This is a green button which is on top left corner. Click on that button, which will bring you to this page where you can now create your repository. So I'm going to use minimal settings in this example. So I'm going to input minimal information because I'm going to later delete this repository. I'm not going to give any memorable name to this repository, but you can give something that you are going to use later on. And because this repository will also be public, make sure that you want to give a decent name to it so that you can share it with other people. You will not be ashamed while sharing it with other people. So I'm just going to call it, for the time being, temp demo dir. So this is the name. Now, to give the repository name, the only thing you have to keep in mind is that you cannot use any special characters like space and probably dollar and percentage and all those things. So it needs to be pretty straightforward. So this is similar to a file name that you will give on your computer, except that here you cannot even use a space key. The description is optional, but I again advise you to use a description so that people understand what this repository does. Keep it public. And finally, these are some of the files that will be added to your repository as placeholders. So first of all, we will need a README file. So this will be a markdown file that will be added to your repository. Here is where you can add a lot more information about your repository. So for instance, if you are planning to keep a data visualization project in this repository, and this project has a certain objective. For example, if you are using this repository to create a data visualization for a social media dashboard, so you can provide all the information about the sources of data, what software you used, what is the purpose of this repository, and then you can even provide certain examples. In some cases, people even provide step-by-step instruction on how to use this repository or the files in this repository. So there could be a lot of information that you can add in this readme.md file. Currently it will be just a placeholder file, so we want it, so that's why we just check this box. The next box is for a file called as gitignore. This file will keep a list of all the files that you want to not upload on GitHub whenever you are syncing or pushing stuff from your own local computer to GitHub. A common example for Mac users is a .dstore file, which generally is the index, and you don't want to push it to GitHub, so you can add that into gitignore, and your system will not push this file to GitHub. I'm not going to select it at this point. And finally, I strongly advise you to choose a license. You can read more about what different licenses mean, what they allow, what they don't allow by clicking on this Learn More button. I will select MIT license to begin with, which in most cases is sufficient for our purposes. And that's all the information GitHub needs at this point. We are now ready to create this repository. So just click on the Create Repository button. This is quick. We already have our repository operational now. As we had selected the license and readme files, so these two files are now added to our repository, but that's about it. Now the readme file currently has nothing, so you can, if you want, you can edit it, but you can also edit this file in Rstudio later on, so you don't have to do anything at this point. So we are now ready to start the process to link GitHub repository to our Rstudio project. So to do that, we will need to copy the URL for this repository. So for this, you will click on this green button called as code, and from that, from HTTPS tab, you will copy this URL. So it is as easy as just clicking on this clipboard icon, and that's it. You have copied this URL now. So we are now ready to go to Rstudio. Alright, so we are now in Rstudio. Here we will create a new project first, and then we will start the linking. So to create the new project, click on the File tab, File menu, and from File menu select New Project, which is the second option from the drop down. Now usually when we create a project, we create it in the local directory, which will be either a new directory or existing directory. Here we are, because we need version control, we will select the third option. And because we are going to use Git, which is on your local computer, and GitHub is the cloud repository. So we will select Git, and here we have to provide the URL we have just now copied. So because we have already copied it, I'm just going to paste it, and in my case you can also see that this project directory name is populated from the name of the repository, but it need not be the same name. You can change this name to anything. In some cases, it is possible that this is not automatically populated, but it doesn't mean anything. You can just write any name that you want. You can put your own name, for example. This is the directory that will be created locally on your computer. For that, you have to make sure that you are also using the correct directory path. So in this case, I do not actually want to store my project, or this do not want to create this directory on this path. So select wherever you want it. So I'm going to select, this is going to be for my fall 2021 class. So I'm just going to create it there. All right, so as you can see that now my the URL, sorry, the subdirectory is going to be on this path, right? And so the name of the subdirectory is going to be this. I can change it to whatever I want, as I mentioned, but I'm just going to keep it like this. And now we are ready to create this project. If you have already some other project open in this session, and maybe you want to open this in a new session, you can do this by clicking here. It will just create a separate R session for you. All right, that's it. Because I did not get any error, my assumption is that things worked, but we cannot just go by that. So recall that on GitHub, we had readme file, readme.md license. These were the two files that were there. Now, interestingly, this gitignore is appearing here as well. So this is created by Rstudio, and it is kept locally in this folder. But on GitHub, all we have is this license and this readme. So currently, we have this gitignore and the project file. These are the two files that are saved only locally. They are not on GitHub, right? So right now we are out of sync to begin with, but we can make it even worse. So let's start adding some stuff in this folder. So you can add some maybe data files. So I'm just going to separately do it. You will not be able to see that Explorer, or the Finder operation I'm going to do, but I'm doing it locally on my computer. So what I'm doing is that I'm copying some file, a zip file, and then another PDF file which is on my computer, and I'm just copying that and pasting it in this folder, which I'm doing locally, okay? And I'm doing it in Finder, which is equivalent to Explorer in Windows. So I just did that, and now I'm now when I see the files tab in Rstudio, I suddenly start seeing those two files here. So this PDF starts showing up, and secondly this techco cstat.dta.zip file, this started showing up. Now these files are saved only locally. They are not available in GitHub at this point. So how do we sync it? Is it automatic? Is it going to check this syncing like Dropbox does every now and then, or we have to take any steps for that? So the answer is yes, we need to take explicit steps to create this sync. So for that, I prefer to go to the top menu bar again. There, click on Tools, and from that select Version Control. Hover your mouse over that, and then Commit. So we are going to create a commit here. Commit does not mean that we have synced anything to GitHub. Creating commit means this is our commit, which is a planned sync, right? So this is what we are going to push or upload on GitHub, but this is what we are planning All right, so go on the in the left top left window, and there are these 4 files, so you can pick and choose which file you want to sync, but we are going to sync all of them. So I'm going to stay here. So right now you see that the first file is highlighted, and then on Mac you can use Command A, letter A, or on Windows you can click Control A. Control A or Command A is a shortcut, keyboard shortcut for select all. So we are selecting all, and then you can simply select or check one of these boxes, and all of them will be automatically selected. And this happens because we have already selected all the files here. So now we have selected all these files. We are ready to commit, but before that GitHub requires that we need to provide a commit message. Now this commit message is an instruction, or I would say just a note that we are going to leave for ourselves for understanding what changes we made. This can be anything you want. If you, for example, you can put your own name here, which is totally meaningless in this context, but this is just the text that we need to have. I'm just going to say uploaded data and a PDF file. All right, so with this we are now ready to commit. So we press this button, commit. All right, you will not get any successful or commit is done, that sort of a message, but this is what you will get. Now when you see this, make a note that you are using, there is a command that was executed here, and this actually gets executed on the terminal. That means this is in Windows system probably on command prompt. That is what the equivalent would be. But on Mac or Linux, we say it is there is a application called as terminal, and that is where this is executed. So this is executed at the level of your operating system and not in your Rstudio necessarily. Okay, so just be aware of that. So this is not an R command that you are seeing here. This is nothing to do with R. Okay, so this is, once this is executed, now you see that there are these 4 files changed, and here there is some message that this has been committed now. And so once this is done, you close this, and you will start getting this message over here on the top, which says your branch is ahead of origin/main by 1 commit. That means we are ahead of that GitHub by 1 commit, right? And the reason is that all the changes we have made so far are on our own system. They are not pushed to GitHub yet. So let's do that by clicking this button, push. And that's it. You see that when we did it, we do not again get any message that says, hey, successful, congratulations, something like that. But you see that it is saying that this was basically pushed right to this link, which is our repository. And that's all we need basically at this point. Just close. You see that the message is gone. That earlier said that this branch was we were ahead by 1 branch. That is gone. That message is gone now, right? And so usually it is instantaneous. Instantaneously it is updated on GitHub, but sometimes it might take, depending on the network speed and so on, maybe a minute or so. So let's go back and see where we are there on GitHub and whether it worked out for us now. All right, so I'm going to just refresh this, and there you go. Now I have the new files that are uploaded, and remember that I had written the commit note saying that uploaded data and a PDF file, and great, that's what I see here. So this is the way you sync stuff. Now it is possible that you made some changes to your GitHub repository, which I do not ask or recommend. So for instance, if you change this readme file over here, rather than making any changes in your RStudio console, you will have to do a pull instead of a push, because pull will download the changes from GitHub to your local repository, and that is again is not going to be automatic, so you need to do that explicitly. But that is something that we rarely do, so I do not advise you to do any such thing. Now we can go back to RStudio, and there we can start making changes to our code. We add maybe our markdown file and so on. Interestingly, if you want to open this .md file, RStudio can open it natively. So for instance, if you wanted to open this PDF file, then RStudio cannot open it natively. It will open it in some other software like Preview on Mac or Acrobat PDF Reader. All those software can read a PDF document, but in case of this .md file, RStudio has native support, and so you can click on this, and as you can see that this is the file that shows up, and so you can make changes to this readme file. So things like this is my first RStudio project, and then you can write more stuff here. And if you know the syntax for markdown, which is very easy, you can make those changes over here, and then you can push those commit those changes and then push to GitHub, and you will see that this will automatically change. So for instance, right now I'm saying this is my first RStudio project, and then I can say something like maybe I want italics, so I will say I love it, and this will start showing up in italics, and I'm done here. And then I'm going to now close this file and then go to tools. I'm going to go to version control, commit, and this readme is now the only file that I need to sync. So here I'm going to say updated the readme file, right? And then I'm just going to say commit and push, and that's it. So as before, we now go to GitHub and then update this. Now the interesting thing is that because we changed the readme file, whatever we wrote inside the file now starts showing up over here, and as I mentioned that I love it will show up in italics, right? Because that is the syntax we used in Markdown. So that is how we have successfully linked the two. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. You liked it, and if you have any questions about this, please let me know, or you can type them in the comments below. There are some situations where you might encounter problems. There are two situations we have observed so far in my MS in data analytics class. So first problem we encountered was that when students first time started the commit, or not even commit, the first time they created the project, they provided the GitHub URL, and when they created this repository, that time I suppose it started asking about an email address, and it will also give you a syntax there how to type that email address. So all you have to do in that case is to copy that code, which will start with get, and then there will be dash and some command which will be given to you, and then there will be a placeholder email address. In that placeholder, in that place you put your email address. It can be any email address, it doesn't mean much, and then you execute that command in the terminal. Now in Rstudio, let me go back to Rstudio and quickly show you. In Rstudio, the terminal you'll see is on the top, right, top left, over here. This is the terminal. So you will have to type your that command, that get something 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 with your email address in this terminal, execute this, and that should remove that error, right? That will be the first error you will face. The second error that we saw was more peculiar, and that actually I also faced that error, was where it said that when I committed something and I was going to push that change to GitHub, it did not allow me to do that because it said that there was some problem in accessing that repository. So what's going on in that case is that when you are on a public repository and you want to download something from there through Rstudio, you don't need any extra permissions. You can just download that without any problem. So when you created your repository on GitHub, and when you wanted to download that locally on Rstudio, you didn't need any specific password or anything. You can download that without any issue. However, the problem appears when you want to push the change from your local files to that repository. That means you need to have the access token activated, which will allow you to write something on that repository. If you do not have that linkage established previously, then it will not work. So for that, I have already given you the instructions in the past. So make sure that you have your access token stored locally, and your GitHub can read that, and then basically you can make any changes or push any changes to GitHub from your local repository. So thank you.